The tight end room is an interesting one going into spring because you don't have a true clear-cut starter. We think we know who the guy is, but he hasn't done anything to this point that you can fully say he's your dude there. Your depth pieces are guys who are new. I think tight ends 2 through 6, 2, 3, 4, 2 through 5. I think tight ends 2 through 5 on this roster are new faces to the program. So there's a lot of new, and could be interesting, could work out for them. We'll start with the number one, and I kind of already mentioned him a little bit, and that's Sam West. Again, the few flashes you saw last year, the touchdown catch against Texas, a couple other opportunities there, a couple blocking reps here or there, you saw potential with him. You saw a guy that you think could work out well for you. Got good size at 6'4", 250. Has got the frame to be an inline blocker, which that's kind of how they used him more last year. Like I mentioned a few minutes ago, when they went 12 personnel, they were putting Sadu and West on the field together. And West, if either of them was going to go in line, it was going to be West, which makes sense. Sadu's kind of your move tight end. West, the bigger body guy who can block in line. And I thought showed you some moments where you could be positive about what he has. Now, still has something to work on as a blocker because I think out in space, he struggled. They tried to use him as a lead blocker on like screen passes. Just didn't work out all that well. A lot of that was early in the season. Maybe got a little bit better as the year went along, but that's a place he still has to grow. Maybe at his size, that's not a place you want to put him in. You kind of want him have him more in tight to the formation and just occasionally use him to leak out. But definitely more of your physical inline type body. But I thought showed enough fluidity as a runner that you could get him involved in the passing game a little bit. It's just we've seen so little of it. He might be back more the way back in the day when Baylor was running this offense, the way that they would kind of treat the tight end is Art Briles basically wanted a sixth offensive lineman on the field. He wanted a guy who is just, I'm up here to be a bully at the line of scrimmage and really help give us an advantage in the run game. And we'll throw some sort of an RPO or a pop pass or a play action to this guy once or twice a game. But that's all the involvement we're doing. I mean, they wouldn't even put him out as a check down option when they were taking shots downfield. That's one of the things. When you watch Levy, when they're taking a vertical shot, the tight ends almost always like check release. They like look for, stay in to protect briefly, see if they got pressure to pick up. And if not, they release out and are looking for a check down. Briles back in the day, it was sort of automatic. You're staying in the block. Like, I don't care if they're sending pressure or not. You're here as an extra blocker. And I wonder if West is a guy Levy would do a little bit more of that with, where that's sort of his role. I want this big physical piece at the line of scrimmage. Again, like, I don't think he was a dominant blocker for State last year, but he showed you some flashes that you think, okay, he could build off that. And maybe he takes a step forward as a receiver. And if he does, and you've got a guy who can be a really good blocker and also be a valuable threat in the receiving game, well, that just opens up a lot of more opportunities for what you can do in the offense. I think there's some talent, there's some potential. He just hasn't fully shown it yet. Comment here from Trey Clark. We didn't seem to target any tight end in the portal. Are we happy with what we got plus the freshman coming in? Well, there is a portal tight end. And I know this hasn't gotten talked about a ton, but State did add a tight end out of the portal. That's the next guy we'll talk about. And that's Riley Williams, who comes over from Oregon State. 6'5", 250, redshirt junior. Played at IMG Academy out of high school, was a 4-star tight end, signed with Miami, and was really productive. I say that. As a freshman, had some opportunities because there were some injuries to Miami's tight end room, and it allowed him to get on the field a little bit earlier than anticipated back as a true freshman. I'm trying to pull up the stats now. And ended up like having a decent campaign. 8 catches, 72 yards, and a touchdown. And I know that won't blow you away, but you look at some of the plays he made, a lot of his catches went for good yardage. 1 catch for 18 yards, 1 catch for 22. Kind of became the number 3 tight end the next year, but again, it was big plays. 27 yards on a reception, 24 on a reception, 30, had like another 20-something yard reception against Virginia Tech, 29 yards against Duke, 7 catches for 115 yards in the season. So didn't get involved in a lot, but when he did get involved, It was big plays. This last year at Oregon State only played 2 games, got injured and missed most of the season. He caught 1 pass for 15 yards against Fresno. But again, 1 catch that goes for 10-plus yards. When he does get the ball, it tends to be a bigger play, and that's because he is that bigger body, typically keeping him in sort of as a blocking type player. But he's a pretty natural receiver for his size. I won't tell you that he's like a great runner, but he's just kind of a big, hulking physical presence when he does have the ball in his hands. And look, can go up and make some nice grabs for what it's worth. Like can go up and make the over-the-shoulder type catch to haul it in. Now, for his size, I don't know that he's the best blocker. I think that's something that's going to have to develop with him for sure. But I think, again, there's talent there. He's kind of in the same realm as a Sam West, where he's shown more as a receiver than West has. I think West has probably shown a little bit more as a blocker. But they're both big body guys who you can play in line, who give you a little bit of both. And I imagine those are probably your top 2 guys early in the season. And if one of them can really emerge as a true weapon, then you really open things up offensively. Now, Trey had asked about the freshman coming in. And I think that's part of the reason why, yes, they did bring in 1 portal tight end, but they didn't go heavy in the portal. You have a trio of freshmen coming in that I think they're very excited about. And a guy that I've talked a lot about because I'm really intrigued by what he could be in this offense right away. And that's Zayon Cotton coming in out of Grenada, 6'5", 230. So he's already put on a little bit of weight since getting here to Mississippi State. Was able to – I know he went through bowl practices, so got those opportunities to start off, which I think is going to be really beneficial for him. Lengthy, big frame, a guy who's playing X receiver in high school. Put him out wide, just let him run vertical, throw it up to him. He was a big play threat, a vertical ball threat. Again, was built like a receiver and runs well too. He's got some speed to him. Definitely a guy that you talk about the mold of an athlete at tight end and a receiving threat at tight end. That's what Zayon Cotton is going to be. Now, as a blocker, he's willing, but was not asked to do much at Grenada. And when he did, it was kind of just okay. That's the part that has to come along. And that's the part that even if you were to say, we're not going to ask you to be a guy to go block in line, we're never going to put you in a 3-point stance. We're never going to tell you that you have to come out of that stance and be blocking the defensive end. We're going to use you to get up to the second level, block linebackers, block safeties, be a blocker out wide on screens. That's how we're going to use you. And I think as a freshman, you can definitely work him in that way and it'd be just fine. But even then, that's a part of his game that's got to develop a little bit. But he's a really good athlete. And he's a guy that could absolutely be a mismatch and create problems over the middle of the field. Maybe even more so than what you had out of Sadu, because he's got a bigger frame than Sadu does. And if you can get him to where the blocking is just adequate as a freshman, and you want it to be something where he comes into the game and it's not a question whether or not they're okay, he can be on the field and they're still going to be able to run the football, the run menu is not reduced to the point that it's like, okay, well, we know they're not running blank because he's in the game. If you can get him to where he can just do enough, I think there's a chance for this to be a really fun player for State to work with the next few years. Something I've talked about a couple times. And I reference Ian Boyd, America's War Game, quite a bit. I think he does a great job discussing football X's and O's and football schematic strategy. And one of the things Ian talked about is if you want to, when it comes to maximizing an offense, you pair the style of tight end you have to the style of quarterback that you have. Because it all within a spread system, spread offense all comes down to being able to beat a box with even numbers. If the defense is going to have, if we're going to have equal numbers in the box, we need to be able to run the football effectively on that. Really, it's run the football effectively. If we have even numbers in the box, we hand the football off and have success running the football. And if you're going to do that, you either need one, a tight end who can handle his own blocking against whoever in the box, or two, you need a quarterback who can run, and therefore you add that extra hat in the run game. So while a lot of people think of like having, when you got a quarterback who's a great passer, they think, well, we want a tight end who's a great pass catcher. A lot of these spread offenses, it's almost better if that quarterback can't really run that well. It's almost better that you have a tight end that's a good blocker, because now you're maximizing your run game when you do hand the football off. We'll let the pass game go to the receivers. On the flip side, while a lot of people would think if you have a running quarterback, you want a guy in there who's going to be a masher and a big-time blocker, it actually can be more beneficial if you put a weapon in at tight end, a guy who's more of a receiving threat, because now you're going to be able to run the football effectively thanks to the quarterback's legs. Can we now get the tight end involved as a weapon in the pass game? So we know you got Camario as a great runner. And I know I talked about, the Baylor teams back in the day, they didn't really care about these rules. They just said, we don't care what look we get. We want tight ends who can just maul and be big-time blockers so that we're always going to know we're physical in the run game. And maybe Levy goes back to that. He may not have a choice given the offensive line situation. Like, that may just be what they have to do. But I think there's also a world with Cotton specifically, because of what he can be as a receiver. The opportunity is there that if you show that you can run the football effectively between Camario and then whoever's at running back, and you're blocking it well enough with your offensive line, if Cotton is someone who, when you do ask him to block, can be adequate, because you got to be able to do that to get on the field. If you have him as a big-time receiving threat to add in, that becomes a really intriguing thing for the offense. I'm really excited about his potential. I think a lot of people feel he probably needs a year to really acclimate, get his body right. We'll see. But I think there's a chance for him to contribute right away. Now, tight ends who have not gotten talked about a lot, and I'll be honest, coming into this in prep, I was not really prepared to say much about Adam Land, who's your freshman out of Panama City in Florida, 6'3", 230. I wonder if I think they might be a bit generous on the 6'3", because I don't know if he's quite that tall. He might be kind of your best of both worlds, though, because when you watch his, and we're going off a huddle, which I know is a highlight tape. It's not your full game film. But you watch the plays he put up from his time in high school as a senior, kind of has some good ability, like both as a receiver and as a blocker. As a receiver, I thought he was he's got some quickness to him. I thought he was a good runner in space, good ball skills as a receiver, understands just how to find open space really well. I thought he was a talented pass catcher. Used differently than Cotton, because Cotton was a guy that they were flexing out and sending vertical. They sent Adam Land vertical, but it was more kind of leaking him out from the slot or like off fake screens and stuff like that. More work in the middle of the field, more working quick game underneath, but really good run after catching those opportunities as well. Physical blocker. Now, they would put him in line, get down to the three-point stance. Really wouldn't have him block defensive ends. They'd still have him kind of get up and get to the second level against linebackers. But a lot of blocking in space against outside backers or nickel corners, like apex defenders, blocking on safeties, just squaring up, knocking those guys to the ground, and then looking for more work. An aggressive and attacking blocker in space. And in space is something that matters to me, because like I mentioned with Sam West, one of the things that I thought held him back last year was when State tried to have him as a blocker out in space, he just missed. Adam Land showed a little bit of that. Now, look, high school athletes versus what you're seeing in the SEC, where the outside backers and nickel corners are running 4-4. It's a little bit of a different deal. But I think he's got some good ability as a blocker, while also could be an effective receiver. He might be one of the more underrated players in this class. What led me to, there's a guy on Gene's page who does a breakdown of the class every year and just gives his thoughts. And he talked about, he thought Land was one of the more underrated players State signed. And then I finally went and watched. I kind of agree. I think Adam Land is a guy that could sneaky get heavily involved for State in the coming years. Could be a special player. And we'll see what that looks like this year. He's enrolled early. So how does that work out? Well, he's going to have an opportunity for sure. I name dropped him on accident. Luke Hutchinson, 6'3", 235 out of Nashville. This guy is your physical blocker type, inline, wide tight end. can definitely still be a receiving threat, but this is a guy that projects mostly to be your, this guy's putting his hand in the dirt, and you're going to ask him to block defensive ends. You're going to ask him to be a lead blocker, that type of stuff. Kind of your real physical piece that you're bringing in. How much is that going to help him as a true freshman? Are you going to get on the field that way? It's possible. If the guys in front of you aren't good blockers, maybe you will. But this is probably a guy that you're developing in that way down the line. It's an interesting freshman class of tight ends. You've got your one guy who you look at as like you're just pure receiving threat in Zayon Cotton. You got the one guy in Hutchinson who I think is probably your big-time blocker. And then you got Land, who's a little bit of both, which leads me, again, really excited about Adam Land. Sneaky is a guy to watch in this class in the coming years. And I don't want to just completely, Joseph Skipworth coming in as a redshirt freshman, 6'5", 225, bit light to be after a redshirt freshman year. Look, an opportunity for him. I can't tell you I know a ton about him, but there's an opportunity for sure with an open room. There's some young talent here. I know you look at Sam West, Riley Williams, you're probably not just blown away by what you got, but I think they brought an impressive class of tight ends into the program. These are guys who I think could develop into a really good group for Mississippi State down the line. I was about to say whether it's in this offense or another one, because we don't. Let's be honest, we don't know what the future holds with some of the questions for this football program right now. But I'm excited about this group, and I'm really excited to see in the spring what we're hearing about the tight ends, because I think I feel confident one of these freshmen is going to get involved one way or another. One of these freshmen is going to play a role in that tight end room as a true freshman, and really curious to see who it's going to be.